Yes, Dominic, it is being recorded. Here we are at episode 16 of Solve, the SaaSOps Live virtual event. We are having our Sweet 16 party. Everybody will receive a piece of cake later on, and whatever gifts people get when they're sweet and 16. Seems a long time ago since we've been in this sort of remote situation. Myself, I know it's been a couple of months, probably since episode 13 that I had a haircut. And we're now in fall. The year is ticking away, and the nights are getting darker. It's very dark here in my SaaSOps Life studio basement. But today we want to do another best of the BetterIT Slack channel. So it's been a busy week. And we have picked out, with the thanks of Michael, we've got our regular bunch of people joining us, and some people coming in late. There's plenty of room at the front. Come and take a seat. We will go through our some of the most popular posts. So if I can work out how to share my screen, and then I'll edit it all magically later on. Do we see that?
What?
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. So one of the topics that we've gone over a number of times, I think, and one of the questions that was asked by somebody called Jared Martin, whoever they may be.
That's me.
As we have Jared here live in the studio by satellite, your question, SaaSOps job titles.
Yeah, so I was mostly just, we have an opportunity to change our job titles, and the ones we have right now make no sense really. It's technical systems, specialist, engineer, blah blah blah. I don't think they make sense. That's like very generic. That nobody knows what that means even. So I thought maybe we could change something else, but I'm kind of uncertain of what that should be. I thought about, SaaSOps maybe being a good one, but that's not necessarily 100% of what we do either. So that's just a part of it. So I'm kind of stuck on figuring out where I should go with that. If I was thinking maybe like IT systems. We also have a systems team that they do like, Linux administration, that type of stuff. So I didn't want to be confused with them. I also don't want to be confused with development, because we're getting requests for doing development things because we're applications right now. So I'm trying to figure out which is the best spot for that, or the best job titles, or best family.
Right. So how many people here have got SaaSOps titles in their organization?
I don't have a SaaSOps title. I have a SaaSOps job description though.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll definitely put it in the job description, because we're going to be redoing our job descriptions too. So I'm going to put a lot of that information in the job description, but
right.
The title is what I'm more so wanting to gather input on.
Right.
We had a long discussion on that thread, Jared. How did you feel about this?
We did, and I'm still kind of, going back and forth. I'm thinking at this point maybe just something, maybe a little more specific, but a little bit less specific, like IT systems would be, somewhat in between potentially. I know we thought about like SaaSOps and, something else with the "and" in it, but I don't know if that makes sense either. That might get too long. Something that's more descriptive than what we have now, so that we're not confused with others in the organization. Because I think there's a lot of confusion right now with others in the organization, which causes issues sometimes.
Right. And I guess the problem is some job titles. Oh, here we have a SaaSOps cat. I guess we'll see how he works with the virtual backgrounds in Zoom. I guess the problem with some job titles is people can think that they've been siloed into only doing one thing, and wouldn't do anything else. What's their basic job description and daily responsibilities?
I would say the daily responsibilities, it's becoming more SaaSOps. We're probably going to be doing a better cloud implementation soon. We have Okta, Office 365, some of that stuff. We also manage our MDM like Jamf, and we have Manage Engine Desktop Central. We manage an on-premises phone system, which that's another one of my further topics. But so that's a big part of it. We do a lot of endpoint management, so that stuff doesn't necessarily maybe fall into the SaaSOps category, but it kind of all does as we start to move everything to the cloud. We've been moving a lot more lately than what we had previously. There's been more of a push.
Right. Would something like just SaaSOps IT engineer work? So it's still got that sort of standard basic.
That could be a good idea, actually. Yeah. Then it would encompass both without having to have an "and" in there. But yeah.
Yeah, I think another one I've come across before, which I thought was good, was an enterprise infrastructure support team. So that encompass some of the infrastructure, like in-house infrastructure they had, which they were maintaining, as well as some of the aspects of SaaSOps.
Sure. And for us, that the people that maintain the in-house stuff is a separate team. So I'm trying not to confuse with them as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking like maybe a information management engineer.
Okay.
We're always managing information across the environment and across the business, but we're also kind of engineering things as well.
Yeah, I would go broad, unless you're talking about a very specialized role.
It's kind of what I was thinking, maybe a little more broad.
Like system engineer or IT engineer is pretty broad and probably would encompass anything that the role would detail. But
sure,
if there's specific kind of engineering,
I've seen a lot of business systems or corporate systems or
corporate engineering. Yeah,
basically anything that triggers you to think this is only internal stuff.
Right.
This team only deals with internal stuff. And so but I've even seen things like productivity engineers.
Sure.
Right. Which is a very SaaSOpsy title.
I would consider. Sorry, go ahead, Rose.
Collaboration engineer, collaboration manager. I've had that.
Whatever would translate to the job market for your employees or the people.
That part kind of depends on your HR, because some HRs do not care what your job titles are. They don't care. And then some HRs, that's how they determine your pay scales.
Right.
So you need to make sure that you line it up when you choose a new job title with.
Yeah, and they do use ours to determine pay scale. I know that. So I had a conversation with them about changing them, and they were open to it. But we haven't. Once we select something, then I'm guessing that conversation will follow.
Well, and you can do some of that groundwork yourself by looking at Glassdoor and stuff, job titles that you're looking for, and seeing what the pay band looks like. Sometimes though, if you choose something that's relatively new, so corporate operations and corporate engineering, is one of those that is new enough that 3 years ago when we switched our help desk job titles to being corporate operations engineers, it would get lumped into a lot of different types of titles. And so the pay band did not look right. Because it would be really low to really high as it found DevOps engineers and things like that, but then also lumped it in with some operations, more general operations stuff, facilities managers and things.
Yeah, that's the limitation I find with some of those bands that often obviously have to be used in corporate environments for the management of salaries. They can be very, very restrictive, especially if you don't, that job title or that job position doesn't fit anything that has already previously existed. So obviously I've got a partially appearing and disappearing cat who's having a little afternoon wash here. So that's why Another cat paw keeps appearing. All right. Any closing thoughts, or we'll go on to the next one?
Just that SaaSOps cat now has to make an appearance on every Solve event.
He will. What was very interesting, we've got 3 cats here. At the start of working from home and the pandemic, March and April, he was at every single meeting I had and became quite famous within the company. June, July, and August, he got really bored of attending meetings and would never come. But September's rolled around and he's joined quite a few this week. So it's probably just becoming, because we're coming to the end of the year and he wants his performance rating to be quite high on his appraisal. That's why he's doing it.
Sure.
Sounds like burnout.
All right, next question was a recommendation for reputable companies that can provide support for cybersecurity related issues. So obviously there are pros and cons of using outsourced third-party companies for doing cybersecurity. There are some big ones out there. I can never remember these names when I need it. Is one called Red Canary? I think it is. Red Canary is one of those. Yeah, they manage and detect attack security threats. They can proactively monitor them. Is anybody here using a third-party company for this sort of cybersecurity stuff?
I've definitely used third-party security companies in the past to do ISO certifications, trainings, and pen testing, things like that, for sure. Yeah.
So the thing is this question is specifically asking about companies that will do remediation for security issues.
Yeah.
And that's part of why, I don't really have a lot to say on this topic because we've never used a company to do that kind of work for us. But I would be curious to hear if there are companies out there that not only do detection and pre-mitigation, but also do post-mitigation.
I can get a few. I've had obviously quite a few colleagues in the past that are CISOs, and one recently had a massive data breach at a gambling company, and they spent about $750,000 in remediation after they got hacked. So they invested a bit in that. So I can definitely find out who they used and send it towards the channel there.
So a lot of MSPs might have an arm that does that. My MSP that I use for firewall security also has a service for spoofing attacks on email. They handle more Office 365 than G Suite right now. But I've actually been there when they're like, oh, here comes another one. So be on a site tour and see them go active live instead of identifying and then starting to remediate almost immediately when it comes in. So
yeah, this specific question Jordan asked sounds like an MSP kind of reseller task where someone who's more the subject matter expert can review your email config and tell you why this is happening, as opposed to actual cybersecurity company that this would probably be beneath, I would think. But
yeah, and I just quickly looked up his company and his DMARC policy, and looks like he does not currently have a policy. So because he has P of none, so I think he just needs to work with an MSP to kind of get towards a quarantine or reject policy for DMARC.
Right. Yeah, there's a range of companies and a range of services that are available depending on the size of your organization and what you need. I've heard from some quite large corporations say that they deliberately haven't built out their own security team, but have rather spent the money that would have been spent on their own tools and security team by hiring another dedicated specialist managed service provider to do that constant monitoring and also have a sort of a task force to be available to be deployed if they ever do have any security incidents that need to be dealt with. They found it a lot better to hire a dedicated specialist company than trying always to hire and recruit and maintain their own internal knowledge. So certainly pros and cons. Obviously, Jordan was asking about email spoofing. I know some people like sending out spoofed emails to their employees to try and trick and train them. And then there are other people that I've heard don't like that practice because it encourages their staff to click on any spoof email to see if it's the company trying to spoof them. So you're sort of encouraging bad behavior once they know that the company is sending out spoofed emails. Does anybody do any sort of phishing training like that? What's other people's thoughts and views?
We do. We use KnowBe4 to do phishing and training.
Right.
And we did have that concern, like what you said, where maybe we're teaching them the wrong thing. But actually, with the KnowBe4 solution in G Suite specifically, I don't know how it works with others, but they have a little add-on for Chrome that you can force out through a Chrome extension. They put the little fish hook at the top next to all the other buttons, and they can click on before they actually open the email. So they're not going in, they're like, this looks suspicious. They click on that right away, pops up a message right in Gmail that says, hey, congratulations, you found the work one. And if it doesn't say that, it says, hey, thanks for reporting it. And then it sends an email to me and I get to look into it more. But that way it prevents the actual going in and clicking on the link. They can actually flag it before. They can flag it if they go into it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I think it's nice to have a solution that will have a way to report back into the system that you're using if it's phishing right away without training them to like, oh, click on the link. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We opted not to use the KnowBe4 Chrome extension because we didn't want to train our users to use something besides Google's like native report phishing stuff. I like, not to say that that's a bad thing, but I think like ultimately we wanted them to know how to do that for themselves, like for their personal emails and stuff too. And so because we're dealing with like 1,000 people, it was going to be a lot of change management to get them to use the new button. And so we were like, let's just keep using the old one. But so that kind of skews our data a little bit, but at the same time, like we warned them it was coming and people still didn't really know it was coming. And like I think in the future we're not going to warn them. And so, but it did become kind of like a little game at our organization. So like as people would get it, like chunks of people would get it at the same time. And so like they would kind of be like, oh, I got the phishing email today. And like, so, yeah.
Rose, can I ask you a question about that? If you're using the built-in spam functionality of Google, you don't have a sense who's like properly identified these, right? The ones that you're sending out?
No, we have a sense of who's reporting it because we can see that on the admin side, the Google admin side.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But you're losing out on that on the KnowBe4 side, right?
Well, no, we still know KnowBe4 has like tracking stuff embedded in those emails.
Right. Got it. Okay.
Know who's opened it and who's clicked on the link embedded in it. Because then the link
who received it, who read it, and if they clicked on the link in KnowBe4, regardless if they mark it as spam or not.
Yeah.
I don't have this. Sorry, go ahead.
I was wondering if it's detecting opens if people have their images not loading, because I don't load my images, for example. And I wonder if it tracks it to pixel, like standard pixel tracking.
So Google knows if you've opened it, and I think it uses that.
It does use that. Oh, okay. Oh, great. Even better. Wow, cool.
We have some users that have their pictures off as well, but it'll still track them if they've opened it or not.
Yeah. I will say for just one note, like we don't allow IMAP or third-party applications for email here. So Like that was a really clean thing, because obviously if you do allow those things, you miss out on a lot of those like integrated features, like the report phishing options and stuff like that. Like who knows where they go if you're using a third-party email service.
Yeah, that's a great point. On the mobile app, there is no integration that I'm aware of to report the phishing. This is only through the Chrome browser.
Yeah, friends don't let friends use IMAP, not anymore. Turn it all off.
Well, one last question. How are you handling success or service desk support emails or sales emails that they may directly end up in your service desk tool? How are you training those people?
Oh, you're talking about spam, phishing emails that might be in
phishing.
a ticketing system in
Yeah.
Fresh Service or ServiceNow, as opposed to somebody's mailbox, right?
Yeah.
Thankfully, haven't come across many, if any, in the last couple of years of using Fresh Service. Maybe had
So
one,
Zendesk
two,
kind
and you could just block them.
Yeah, Zendesk has a pretty strong spam filter.
Yeah, and you can use that to filter them out. We haven't had any issues with it since we started using Spoke, but I think that's because all of our emails now, like that become tickets, have to go through a Google group that is also filtering for spam.
As well.
Yeah, but how do you train your people? Just because it filters for spam doesn't mean it's
I mean,
not
like
coming
the
through.
IT team, like we train.
Yeah, or your sales team that has access to the sales group.
No, we don't. So our ticketing system is pretty limited. We have basically HR, facilities, and IT on it, and they're all well versed in.
Everyone knows IT people never make mistakes. We just don't train them.
Yeah, shame works internally. Yeah.
Shame works internally. Yeah.
That works. Yeah. Yeah, I know because we use a sales address pretty heavily.
We get most of the same training everyone else does. I mean, there's more one-on-one stuff that goes on, but it's their standard employees basically.
The training will happen through their personal work email, not the group ones through your service desk or whatever it may be. And hopefully, cross your fingers, those carry over to those other services. But
well, and the other thing too is like using something like KnowBe4 or another security training program. Like you can use what you know about your employees to target trainings at them. So, like if we knew that the sales team was in that kind of situation, right, where they're susceptible to spam that isn't coming directly to them, but is coming through another system, we would target them with training about detecting spam in other places, not just like in your email inbox. Or we would send them a message to say, by the way, this also applies to tickets that are coming in for you. But yeah, I am actually supposed to be in another meeting next.
All right, another question before my cat destroys my desk. If you hear anything breaking over here, it's the cat destroying things. External password sharing. So does anyone have a solution they use for sharing passwords with people outside of the organization securely? This is a head scratcher. I don't know. There is LastPass, but you need that other person to have a LastPass account. When I was thinking about this, the one solution would be the password vault within G Suite and giving somebody a cloud identity account to access it. Anybody doing this solution at the moment found a way of securely doing it?
I worked with go ahead, Alex.
No, you go ahead. Go.
Oh, I was just going to say I've used this service called Yopass. It's an open source tool that another company I worked with used. And it's based on some pretty solid encryption. So if you host it yourself, you can be pretty certain that when you share the password out, it'll be secure. And it has the option for single time use. So once you share it and they open it, it's gone forever. So, yeah.
What was that called? If you put it in the chat.
Yeah.
That would be good.
Now, if I was like, think about what is the use case for sharing a password, right? Are you sharing it because you need someone to just know what the password is temporarily and then the password changes? Or are you sharing credentials with someone and they're going to keep that password for a while? And do you need to track every time they use it? I think there's a lot of different use cases here of sharing credentials externally, and depending on what actually you need to track. And part of that, you can obviously share credentials securely, literally through a Google Doc, right? Because if you share it through authentication with a named user, you know that only they have access to it, just like you would any other service or any other way for them to get a hold of it. And once you don't want them to have it, you change your password and you remove access from that document. Now, it's not the most robust thing, right? But in a sense, you have shared it with them securely. It's in an encrypted document on Google servers that are encrypted, a 365 document, whatever, collaboration tool you use. And as long as you make sure that the person accessing it is authenticating with an identity, then has that not been shared securely? I don't know.
It has to an extent, but again, if an IT administrator can view that file without you knowing it, then that's a consideration. So, but yeah, in general, that's definitely.
We can do that through LastPass as a super admin. The maintainers of the LastPass have master access to all that stuff. So, that's not any more secure than sharing it the way I described, I would say.
No, but calling someone over the phone and giving them a password you can speak would be
that too. Yeah, exactly.
Ideal. That's why I suggested in the chat. If it's actually a password that you don't intend to change, if you can, you should just make it to where you can speak it and they can get the idea over the phone without too much hassle. But yeah, any other, unless you're like encrypting end to end some kind of service, anything else is at some point exposed.
So what we do if we need to give a third party a password and it's their account to use, so when they first use it, they're going to change that password. We use Virtue, so we encrypt the email to them in Virtue.
Yep.
We can specify that the email expires after a certain amount of time. It can't be forwarded, etc. And also, when the third party has read it, we consider that to be a secure. But it's this. I don't know if Marcus in his question was talking about sort of a shared password. If like a Twitter account or an Instagram account or a Facebook corporate account, you might have another party, third party managing that or helping to do an event, and they would need access to that password. How that would be done. That's where it gets more complicated.
Yeah. Ideally, if it's something that third party's using, I don't want to know the password. So if they can change it and then I can reset it if I need to get into the account, then that's fine. If multiple parties are sharing the same account, then you're probably doing something wrong or trying to do it cheaper. But that happens.
Yeah, sometimes there's a limitation on the service that they need access to.
Yeah, a lot of those you can update the email to be whatever the new person is going to use it, and then do the forgot password. Like, don't give them a password. It sends it. They immediately have to change it, and then nobody except that person has to know. But again, for those off cases where you have multiple people that need it, we don't use a lot of services, I guess, but I have yet to see a service that I can't then create my own, or the user some type of account that needs access. That way, we literally, when I first started here, they were sharing all kinds of things like, no, stop. For free, we can have this other account. Or for a few dollars more, we can have another account. It's worth the security to have your own account for all these things that you think you need to share.
Yeah.
So maybe, like I said, I don't know Twitter and Facebook, corporate, all that stuff. If you really have to have one account that 10 people use, I wouldn't use that service personally, but some companies have to.
Yeah.
We're heavy users of Keybase here, which, again, somebody needs that on the other side, but it's happened more often than not that if you're sharing a password with a third party as an IT administrator, the person on the other end is likely to be sophisticated enough that they might already have Keybase account, and there's just PGP encryption there. So
yeah, that's
definitely handy.
That's great. The problem I run into is trying to explain to a non-IT person how to do something, and if I can't quickly like tell them how to do it, then it's probably not a great solution.
Yeah, but I would imagine in those scenarios, I wouldn't be giving a password to that person. I'd be finding any other method of getting them a
Right.
one-time account and avoid that. But I hear you.
But yeah, Steve's Google Doc is like the easiest way to do things if you're in G Suite at least.
So Alex, I've got to ask: do you do the NATO phonic alphabet, or do you do like A for aardvark, B for belly dancer, C for chalk?
I like to mix it up. No, I was referring more to like saying correct horse battery staple,
right?
Like space, that kind of thing. Like something very easy to not confuse, because people will get things wrong even phonetically. I've seen.
Alex, please change your Windows password tomorrow. Well, now.
I can share my XKCD password generator JSON file that I use. Well, I don't know. Should I share that? I mean, that kind of gives away part of my algorithm, doesn't it? You don't really want to give that away, do you?
What's the random? Yeah.
Yeah, because then you can like guess it, because then you know the parameters to like look for a password that meets my you don't want to give that away. But yeah, I do things with more common words. Put the words together, put some separators between it that are standard, put some numbers in it. Just simple things that you can talk to someone over the phone with. Or you can look at it and you can type it somewhere else and not have to look back 5 million times. Because really, I mean, is it more about the complexity? Because when someone tries to get a hold of that password, are they actually doing a full, are they trying to crack it? Are they looking at, did they actually just get access to the database in raw text, which is what happens most of the time? So it really doesn't matter how complex your password is. It really matters that the company storing it stores it in a way that they can't get it in plain text. And unfortunately, that's not the case. So make it simple to use, make it long if you want to, and then put two-step verification on it. And you're pretty good, you're as good as you can be on it without having to create too much of a hurdle of trying to figure out how to, is it a lowercase I or lowercase a capital L or something like that, I don't know.
Yep. All right, let's move on to another question. Back to the Jared show. Phone system recommendations. So Jared is looking for options on his phone system, Avaya on-premise. There are obviously cloud services with Avaya, but there are limitations, problems. Has anybody here gone fully cloud using Dialpad, Google Voice, RingCentral? Yeah, Alex has. Mike?
I think
Dialpad.
I think the thing that was really getting me on this is we have an existing vendor that supports our Avaya on-premises system. They also sell RingCentral, and they also sell the new Avaya partnership with RingCentral. And they basically told us that we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't move to a cloud system because they don't work. And I'm kind of thinking that's, probably
not
as
true. Much money. Yeah, they're not making as much money.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. So I was putting it to the group to see what everybody's experiences has been with cloud-based phone systems to see if they're working for them, because we have a number of sellers, people that sell these things, and they wouldn't be in business if their stuff didn't work. At least that's kind of what I'm thinking. But so I wanted to just see if my thoughts were people shared those thoughts.
I think your use case is probably the biggest factor in like how you're using hunt groups or different call center features that may not be available in different cloud systems. That's the one thing we identified when we were evaluating is that's the biggest separation is if you're using it in a traditional VoIP system with all the bells and whistles, you may find that lacking on the cloud side.
And we do have a need for a contact center integrations too. Our contact center right now is on premises. I'd say it's probably the biggest Achilles heel of our phone system right now, which we're looking to replace that too. So integration with both would be ideal.
Wait, your on-prem still already doesn't work? Wait, what?
Yeah,
How bad can cloud be?
Yeah, we have a on-premises contact center too, which is not the same as our phone system. That it's a system called Fusion, and it's poor at best, I would say.
Did you say that wrong, or is it Fusion?
Fusion with a V, yeah, VUESION.
Are you willing to mix and match in the cloud too, or are you preferring to go once?
Well, I think both in the cloud is ideal because we're going to be moving to a new CRM platform.
No. My question was more: are you willing to mix and match different cloud systems for your needs to fit your needs?
That maybe. I don't know. I guess it depends on what the integration will look like. We haven't really gotten that far yet. I set up a call with RingCentral and with Dialpad next week, so we'll see what they have to say.
When we looked at those cloud-based telephone systems a number of years ago, Dialpad and RingCentral, I was, after having a traditional sort of on-premise phone system, I was shocked at the expense of them. They are, if you can cope with that legacy physical on-premise system, I couldn't mentally get around the justification of moving to a cloud-based system when the fees for a telephone line and the ability to take calls from your computer was more or the same as a full G Suite account or Office 365. What are other people's thoughts on the finances around cloud telephony?
I had the same experience as you. I was coming from a situation where we were trying to grow out of a BYOD situation of people bringing their own phones. We didn't have anything existing that we were replacing. So we did kind of trim it down to only those who need it. But you're right. I mean, the cost structure of those things was pretty staggering, and we ended up doing it, but it just made us nickel and dime every part of that. And do you really need this? Do you really need this?
And don't talk to Swedes or any other Nordic country. They just give you a phone, which you need anyway, and a mobile phone number. And it's cheaper if you plan it over 3 years with the phone than any of those systems. You probably get unlimited phone calls for 5 to 10 euros in Sweden and Norway. And and that's not even a part of G Suite or Google Voice, because you in Europe you have to sort of pay minutes.
Yeah, I think
for 30 euros.
Even in North America, the cost of corporate cell phone lines have come down significantly. That even though you do have the hassle of the management of the hardware devices and you have the cost of them, but with a phone system for a predominantly mobile workforce, getting a cell phone makes more sense. The only problem is you can't have a central directory. You can't have call hunt groups or easily transfer calls from one person to another.
Well, but can't you?
Those are, I think, I'd have to check back. I don't manage our system, but I think most of those features, at least in Dialpad, are there. But yeah, the cost, cost has a lot to do with the scale of the deployment, and that's a pretty big factor.
Yeah. I look forward for the day for telephony to disappear altogether. I know it is obviously needed by some organizations. It's still very a very important business tool for some. Thankfully, it's not that important in the business that we're in. Everybody's using. My monitors have turned themselves off. Everybody's using chat and Slack or Zoom for their communication and collaboration. All right, I think we've got 2 more questions in the last 10 minutes. So this one is company-wide MDM rollout communications. does anyone have a good resource or open to sharing their communications about rolling out MDM? So our organization, we rolled out MDM such a long time ago. It just seems like something that we've always had. I think it was 2013 when we started to put mobile device management on BYOD devices to access our information on Android and iOS. Has anybody else done a recent MDM rollout? And of course, MDM isn't just for phones, Android, iOS. MDM should be expanded to Mac and Windows.
So I did an MDM iOS Android rollout, and it was, we didn't have the policy in place to kind of do it from an HR perspective initially, but we kind of did have the autonomy to kind of do what we needed to do within IT. So what the approach that I took with that was, I started enabling that. I created a new organizational unit within our G Suite environment and enabled it for all of our new hires as of the when I came on board. So every new hire had it by default. So it was just standard. They didn't even think twice about it. And then they started using it. It became common for them. We worked with HR to figure out what do we need to communicate this with the rest of the organization. And then we planned the rollout for the people that were kind of the legacy users. And then you had after a few months, you actually got a lot of people. If you're hiring on a regular basis, you've got a decent amount of people already on it to test it, know what the intricacies are of the business use of their device and how it affects, maybe how the MDM affects that. So that's kind of how I've done rollouts in organizations that didn't have it and we needed to do it.
Anybody else done rollouts? I've heard of some organizations having great difficulty trying to do an MDM rollout. Certainly, if it's an industry that's a unionized industry, there was a lot of negotiations with the union about the MDM rollout and all of the policies that it would allow. I think as a standard piece of security, it should certainly be something that's adopted.
We had, while you're talking about unions, etc., we have a German company that I don't remember the name right now, who had exactly these discussions about Microsoft Teams.
Oh.
And docs and all of those, and tracking opportunities and privacy questions here in Germany. And every new feature rollout that's trackable or that has to go through the employees board now, and that's a lot of work.
A nightmare.
A nightmare, yes.
Change management is hard enough as it is without lawyers and focus groups getting involved as well.
Yeah, and the employees board that you cannot fire because that's why they're there, and that can block everything.
Right.
Politics. Yeah, that sounds fun.
Well, I think Stephen's idea of having all the new hires, you don't change it for your legacy employees, but as new hires come on board, and then obviously as people leave, the number of people that don't have MDM enforced would get smaller, and then potentially more more easily tackled and getting them ported over.
There's a lot of great information in that actual thread that I don't really feel like reiterating, but
right.
I can add, make sure like with everything, make sure you thoroughly test the rollout and make sure that do it 20 times or something within reason. Make sure that you're not just you did it twice and it works, so you're good, and different devices, that kind of thing. Just because you want to be able to go to higher level people and get them on board when you're trying to track down an elusive team of people, and you don't want to go to them and then have it mess up and then they don't trust you at all now.
Yes.
I've seen
Yeah.
that happen. So
Yeah, certainly need to get HR or leadership buy-in. The one thing that we always do is, like, if I've written a guide and I give it to one of my team to read, something goes off in my brain thinking, hang on a minute, we're two IT people reading an IT guide. Of course we can understand it because we're
see if the cat can read it. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're like, well, let's find a friendly end user, ask them to, give them a spare computer or give them a device, say, can you read these instructions that we've written? Do they make sense? And we get very, very constructive feedback from them, and it's different tweaks. I know with one rollout we did of something, I edited different size groups as it went along. And then did it to an office, and each time I would get feedback on misunderstandings in the how-to guide and the wording, and in the end I got it down to no questions being asked for the last group that had it applied to them. All right, last question in the last 3 minutes as we get to the top of the hour, and I know people have got other places to go. This is an interesting thing to have done, identity change management. From Verkalangaling, I can't pronounce that. Sorry if I've butchered the pronunciation of your name there. Someone has probably changed the primary identity of an end user before. We have. It's a bit of a task. I wouldn't recommend it for those that are of the faint of heart. Thoughts, experiences, questions?
I went through this last night, actually. The founder of the company that I'm kind of advising, he went and decided to delete the people I created in the correct security group and turn off two-step verification and delete their old accounts, create a new account for them. They already had Google Drive files. They had their identities in Slack. Like, it was a nightmare trying to just and they had their phones obviously signed in, and you just don't ever want it to happen. It's a mess. So we had to try to figure out a way to revert it. It was pretty close to when these new accounts got created. So I went back and I deleted the new accounts that just got generated. And, we just had to kind of backtrack a little bit and get them back into their old accounts. But probably a little bit different scenario than a rename, but it's identity management and renames are not nice if you're doing it a lot.
Is this just a rename on a primary ID for an account? Is that?
I think I think it's just this. Where the question that came in was about changing domain name. From a secondary to a primary. We've done that when we've done a corporate name change, updated our email addresses. The hardest part is dealing with all of the SAML providers that you have and getting them to update all the user account information on their side so that everybody's SAML authentication works. And also the physical thing you need to do is you need to wipe all of your Chromebox meeting units and re-enroll them. And also you need to get Google on the phone because all the licenses need to be released and then re-added to the new domain, which is a process in itself.
Yeah, one thing about that SAML situation there that might help with the process is most of the times you can do custom attribute mapping. And if you don't want to change the email address on the third-party service, you basically create a custom attribute, let's say on the Google identity of the user, that is actually their old email address, right? And then when you send that identity across to your third party, they're still picking up on that, your user in Google is still authenticating with their new credentials. The SAML assertion is passing the identity that they know from before, and you don't do anything other than doing an API call on the G Suite side to create a new attribute and the old email address, and you're done. And then you just change the configuration on the third-party provider side to say, look for this attribute to match up for email addresses instead of the one you're looking at or something like that.
That's a very good solution.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's 55 minutes of the best of BetterIT. Thank you for everybody for the last hour. Steve's going to go back to his pint. Are you in a bar somewhere?
I'm in a brewery. Yes, I'm currently enjoying a pint in a Blue Nose brewery. we're just about to go explore a new location for a potential gastropub and private members whiskey club in the suburbs here of Chicago. So
Wow.
exciting. Yeah. So anyone that comes to Chicago, hopefully in 6 to 9 months, maybe let me know. We might have a cool spot to hang out at.
All right. Yeah, certainly
I'll
might
take
do
up on
that.
that.
Yeah, it's just a short drive down from Toronto, isn't it, Brian?
Yeah, I've done the drive. So when I was actually driving back, I think a couple of years ago, my muffler kind of came loose. So when I was crossing the border, my car sounded like super loud. So like border agent told me to shut my car down.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to cross borders soon enough
Mm-hmm.
if we have mufflers or not. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm
Oh,
going to
yeah.
press pause here.